So that being said, let us look at the Oracle Cloud. What are the couple of terms that you should know? Okay, and this is pretty important, guys. So the first term that you should know in Oracle Cloud is AZ. That means availability zone. What are the availability zones in Oracle Cloud? Availability zone is a physical area or physical location. Sorry, physical location where data centers reside. All right, this is the exact physical location. Let's take, it might be US, Salt Lake City, it might be London, it might be India, or in India maybe in Mumbai, it might be Singapore. These are the exact physical location where your data centers reside. So if you see this one, can you see, like, this is, I have just now logged into the Oracle Cloud, and this is how the dashboard looks like. Couple of important things, but I'll come to it later on. Sorry guys, I missed on it. You have something called regions above availability zone. You can see our region is Frankfurt right now, and let me make this change. So this is not AZ, this is regions, right? These regions are the physical locations where your data centers reside, and within these regions you have availability zone. Like, let's take in Salt Lake City, you might have 3 availability zone. That means 3 data centers in that physical location. So I think we can rephrase it. Regions are physical location where you have multiple availability zones. All right, so that's the region. It's a physical location. Let's take Salt Lake City, and within Salt Lake City you might have multiple availability zones, which are like, you might have 3 or 2 data centers which physically reside in that location. So what happens is, when you try to create any cloud infrastructure, you need to define which region will work for you. For example, let's take, you are a business in US. So for you, US business, for you to have your servers rented in Singapore, do you think it's a good idea? It's not a good idea. Why? Because every time your users from US, they will travel over the network to connect to your data center that is in Singapore, because that's where you rented your servers, and the response will be given back to the users. So for technically, in this kind of scenario, it is better to rent a server which resides in United States, because the network travel time will be less. So that being said, guys, when you first create, right now, Oracle Cloud is offering free trials, and I encourage you guys to definitely create an account and try to play around with Oracle Cloud, but don't overdo it until unless, I'll show you something. Can you see over here? This is also my trial account just for this session. You can see we get trial credits of 400 Singapore dollars. I mean, in my case, I choose the SGD as my billing, and my trial period is like 15 days are over in the trial period. But guys, remember this, do not, I mean, do not, if you can't, if you are unable to keep track of your Oracle account, then don't even try to go with the trial account, because I'll tell you the problem. When you create the Oracle Cloud account, you need to give your credit card details, and trust me guys, the cloud infrastructures, they punish you heavily in case if you don't know how to manage your instances, how to manage your network. Even for allocating one simple IP address, that might charge your card a bomb. So be very careful. I encourage you to create a free account, but try to close it even before your trial ends or your credits ends. So this is the first dashboard that you get in. Now the thing is, like, once you logged into your Oracle Cloud account, what can you do, or what all things can you create inside the Oracle Cloud? So if you click on this burger menu, I think that's how we call it. So in this hamburger menu, what happens is you have all the options that you can create the different things inside your own cloud. But ultimately, the first thing when you land on any cloud, whether it is Oracle, whether it is Google, whether it is AWS, make sure region is set correctly, because sometimes you might be working on multiple regions and you are trying to edit something on other region, and then you panic saying like, oh, where is my machine, and I'm not able to look at the server. So don't panic. Anytime when you work in the cloud, first things is make sure you're in the right region, otherwise it will be a problem. And any big change that you want to make in a region, or your Oracle Cloud or any cloud, always again make sure you're in the right region. So what all can we do inside cloud? In this menu, can you see we can create instances? Now, these are not the database instances. Don't get confused with your database instance and your Linux instance. Now, this is a compute cloud. We generally call it as compute cloud. And in cloud, anything that we call it as compute will be a virtual machine. So you can see over here, these are virtual machines that you can create inside the cloud. Let's take, you want to create a Linux virtual machine, you want to create a Windows virtual machine, you want to create an Ubuntu virtual machine, you can create it over here in the instances. And you can definitely have instance configuration, like predefined configuration for instances that will be applied to those instances. You can have instance pool, saying like, instance pool, I think if you don't have an example, or if you haven't heard about this, then let's take, you have 3 servers, and this is for let's take sales prod server, sales dev server, and then you have sales test server. And then what you can do is you can create a pool, and then you call it as sales servers pool. So that way you can group the instances with one pool name. It is just naming group. It's like a name that you assign, and with that name you group the servers, but nothing more than that. You don't technically do any configuration over there. This is pretty interesting, guys. Auto scaling configuration. When you create an instance inside the cloud, it might not be of auto scaling, right? Let's take, many people, they say, or many online gurus who all misguide the students. They say that, hey, you can create a virtual machine in cloud, and let's take, right now you said 2 GB RAM and 1 TB hard disk. Then as and when the utilization nears 2 GB, it will automatically scale to 3 GB. It doesn't happen, guys, until unless you create an auto scaling virtual machine. All right. So until unless you create an auto scaling configuration, or you define an auto scaling configuration. So what is an auto scaling configuration? You define some rules. You say like, if the RAM usage in sales server pool is above 90%, then scale the RAM to 4 GB. Just one example I'm giving. All right. So this auto scaling instances or auto scaling configurations are the ones that define when your instance can auto scale and when your instance can shrink. Again, guys, not all cloud vendors provide these kind of auto scaling configurations. So be very careful depending on choosing what instance type. And guys, all these stuff is done by a cloud architect. I mean, that's the right person who work with your client when they are migrating to cloud. Custom images. Let's take what Oracle will do is Oracle will provide you default OS level images like Ubuntu or Linux or Windows, you can use those images to create your virtual machine. But you yourself can upload your own custom images in cloud, and using those custom images, you can create your own virtual machines. These boot volumes are like your hard disk, the main hard disk that is attached to the instances where the operating system is stored. So every time you create an instance, definitely there will be a boot volume, and this area is where you take the backup of the boot volumes. And then you have storage. See, when you create an instance, I know guys, for some of you this might be a little bit heavy, but that's okay. I think if you watch it a couple of times, you will understand. So let's take you create a virtual machine with OEL 7.5. In this one, you attached one hard disk, the first hard disk, and this hard disk size is 50 GB, right? Now this hard disk will definitely be your boot volume, because in this hard disk is where your operating system is stored. Perfect. But let's take you want to create a database, and then users will be inserting data inside the database. So this boot volume 50 GB will not be enough. Then what you need to do is you need to attach a second hard disk of maybe 1 TB, and this will be user volume. All right. So these additional hard disks that you create inside the cloud, this is created under the block storage. You kind of create different block volumes, and then you group those volumes. You have an option to group those volume groups. And then you have object storage. I'm not sure in what terms Oracle deals with the object storage, because for none of my clients, we have never used or worked with the object storage. I'm not sure, this might be a fancy stuff again. File storage is you can again define file systems and then attach those file systems to virtual machines. Now guys, honestly, you might have this question, right? Arun, we are DBAs. Why are we dealing with volumes, block volumes, and images, virtual machines? So guys, in cloud, every every department needs to work together. So in general, the cloud has multiple people who will be working in order to deploy one simple thing. For example, you need to have OS team in order to create and manage the servers, and then you have storage team which will take care of the blocks, the file systems, and the volumes. All right. And then you have a network team which will be responsible to define the network between the servers. And that's when, and after this is when DB team will come into picture. So you don't have to worry. Don't worry like, Arun, will I be responsible for installing OS? Will I be responsible for storage? Will I be responsible for network? In some environment, yes. But in most of the environments, if you're working with a big corporate, definitely they'll have a different people working together in the cloud in order to deploy something. But my suggestion is, if you get a chance to work in a startup when it comes to cloud, that's when you will learn a lot. All right. So guys, 1 minute. I'm just clicking here and there so that we don't log out from this session. All right. And this one is networking part, guys. Like we also have load balancer, and this might be, because this is my assumption, this might be a good use in a high transactional environment. And a lot of high transactional clients, they definitely take use of load balancers in the cloud. So this is again deployed by your network engineer in the cloud. And this public IPs, guys, this is again important. Whenever you create a machine in the cloud, you cannot directly access it. So what you do is you attach a public IP address to the machine, and using that public IP, everyone in the world can access the cloud. And of course, there are a lot of options, but I will talk about these three. These three are again very important. So guys, in the compute, if you remember, I said these are virtual machines. What is a virtual machine? So you have an ESXi server, and this ESXi server will host multiple VM1, VM2, and then VM3. And on this VM, you tend to install OEL7, and then on top of OEL7, you install your database. This is how generally happens in virtual environment. The problem is sometimes some applications, let's take not database, some other application, you cannot deploy it on a virtual machine. You need the power of bare metal server. And there is a reason to it, unfortunately. That will be again completely out of the scope of this session. So some applications, they cannot perform well when this is the hardware, right? So you have an hardware layer, and on top of hardware you have this virtual layer, and on top of this virtual layer you have operating system. Some cases the operating system needs to directly talk with the hardware. They cannot perform well if there is a virtual layer in between. In those kind of applications, you need a bare metal server. You need a physical server. And guys, remember, as of today, the companies that are providing bare metal servers are IBM Software. They provide the bare metal servers. Oracle is providing bare metal server. It's like exactly purchasing a physical server, but you're renting it from somebody else. In AWS, they have only one configuration bare metal server, which is very costly. So as of today, like people, if they want a physical server, they either go with IBM Software or they go with Oracle. And this is one of the biggest reasons when people say why people move from AWS, because some applications, they just can't work on virtual environment. They need a physical interaction. So this is where you can create bare metal servers. You can again create virtual machines, and the beauty is it will allow you to create or deploy a pre-built Exadata in the cloud. You click on this, you define the options and work on the Exadata. These two are the most feared stuff right now in the DBA world, but I think nobody has to fear. Autonomous database. Many people say that, of course, autonomous database will take away DBA jobs, but that's not the case, guys. The autonomous DBA database, it only works on the cloud. So if you create a database, autonomous data warehouse, or autonomous transaction processing database only in the cloud, okay, this is not possible on the physical premises, or if you install Oracle on your company server, it is not possible. Only in Oracle Cloud, if you deploy this service, that is the exact point of time where this autonomous database, let's take, if you create this autonomous database, the beauty about this database is it is auto tuning database, auto scaling database. And as a DBA, your job, and it will take auto backups also. So as a DBA, you don't need to manage this database at all. But again, guys, somewhere or the other, human intervention is required. So when you want to create some users in the autonomous database, you need to have a DBA to create the users. But your table space administration is completely gone. Your disaster recovery is completely gone, because with one click you can create a data guard setup, and then your backup and recovery tasks are completely automated. It can take automatic backups for your database. Now, don't fear with the autonomous database as much as so many people created a big hype on the internet, because this is not at all taking your jobs away. Understand, this is just introduced, right? So anything that is newly built, definitely it will have problems, and maybe it might mature in the upcoming versions or maybe upcoming releases that Oracle will go ahead. So these two are important. And apart from this, definitely you have other tabs to work on this cloud. So to conclude, what exactly is a cloud? For me, I keep things simple. It's like you are renting servers in the cloud. Now, it depends what type of server you're renting, which location you are renting, what all other things you are renting from the cloud vendor. It all depends. You might rent volumes, you might rent storage, you might rent public IP addresses, you might rent networks, you might rent a load balancer, you might rent a bare metal server, you might rent a virtual server, and much more. So guys, that's a small overview of Oracle Cloud.